And today we are back to the book that we're covering now, which is Christ in the Rubble by Dr. Munder Ishak. And today's chapter 2. And our presenter today is Abhay, who is in Vancouver Island in Canada. Abhay, when you're ready,
Yeah.
you can start.
So last week we talked about, first chapter. This is the second chapter where towards the end of first chapter, the author did say that this is not, this didn't start on October 7th. In the second chapter, the author goes back to, um, you know, in 1948, where that was the kind of, the events led to the formation of Israel, foundation of Israel, and what happened afterwards. The chapter is divided in, and I know for that many people still don't have the book or something, so I'll just try to give an overview of the whole chapter. So the author has divided the whole chapter in multiple subsections where he discusses the occupation. He talks about what settler colonialism is. He talks about apartheid and where Zionism is today. And he ends the chapter with some facts. Um, you know, like what does it all mean in terms of how we have kind of reached to this point. So the start of the chapter, he has given the perspective of what in the West, um, in the Western Christian um, world, how this has been presented so far. It's like I don't have the biblical knowledge, so I tried my best to kind of read about it, who Anne Graham Lotz is, who her father was, and all. But she basically says that God has made the Arabs hate the Jews, and that's the way it is, and it's kind of bizarre. Um, and that's what author points out, that it's quite misrepresenting and abusing the Bible um, for one group against other group. So that's what um, the quote is about. The author goes on to say that this is the lack of will in the Western world to contextualize everything that has led to October 7th. When people always say that, what about October 7th? But nobody says, what about October 6th and before, since 1948? That is the background for this chapter. Um, the one thing that the author makes really clear is that Palestinians don't have a problem with Jews and Judaism itself, the religion, but they have a problem with Zionism and the state of Israel. So that's a huge difference that many people intentionally conflate and intermix, but the author is very clear about this. Um, Moving on, yeah. Author starts with what exactly is settler colonialism. Um, it's a form of colonialism in which kind of the existing people that who have been living there on the land are displaced by force almost always, and their land is taken and a new population is established and their rights are enshrined in the law at the expense of the people that were already there. So that's like the international um, definition of settler colonialism that international community of scholars and academia and um, human rights groups have adopted. Second is the author points this fact out that settler colonialism destroys to replace. He gives an example of Patrick Wolf, who is a scholar on settler colonialism. That's his definition, is that um, whatever is there needs to be destroyed so that other people can move in. Um, what's striking also is that now how, a pro-Israeli movement always says that it's the land without people for the people without land. It's the land without people part that's always um, kind of, misrepresented. It's kind of a lie. But early Zionist movement, as the author points out, was very candid about this. They were very open about it. One example the author has given is that um, Herzl, who was the father of the political Zionism, who himself was born in Austria, I guess, yeah. He has openly said that we will, European Jewry will colonize Palestine. He himself has used the word colonize explicitly. Same with other Zionist leaders that the author has given some examples, as Jabotinsky. Um, so they themselves used that terminology explicitly. Then how did they do this? uh, through social and economical institutions that were founded by the early Zionists, such as the Jewish National Fund, which collected funds from all across the world Jewry, to fund the colonization project, buy land. Um, and then when that when the Israel the war happened, that was used to purchase um, basically fund the war. So that's what the JNF and other institutions were founded for. Well, there are a couple of notes I want to point out here is that um, the ICJ Rome Statute itself um, declares that this is settler colonialism can be considered inherently genocidal because it removes the existing population that has been there, the original inhabitants of the land, and forcefully transfers them. So that is a war crime itself. There is a documentary about this that goes into the weeds of how the early Zionist movement, came along and uh, like displaced the Palestinians from their villages, towns all across. The documentary name is Blue Box. Um, do make sure, if you have a chance to watch it. Second thing I would like to point out that author has also pointed this out, but close to 1 million olive trees up until now, since 1948, have been destroyed. So if you kind of, take that into account, that's 12,000 acres, which is it's not even just the land that people have people have been living on. It's just the olive groves that comes to about 120 villages. So just so that new settlements can be built. This in and itself is like ecocide, basically, apart from the fact that it is considered as a genocide. Um, but yeah, those two notes I wanted to add. Next, the author goes on to talk about Nakba. Nakba means catastrophe in Arabic. It's how the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians was carried out by the um, during the war by the Zionist forces. Um, Author has given some statistics about it. Between 750,000 to 1 million Palestinians were forcefully, expelled from their homeland, from their villages. Um, Several dozen massacres happened during the whole catastrophe. Two are very well known. There is documentary about one, two, which is Tantura and Dair Yassin. More than 400 Palestinian cities and towns were systematically destroyed. And that's where the previous point comes along is that they were destroyed, and on top of that land, um, forests were kind of, millions of trees were planted so that the Palestinians would have nowhere to come back to. This is a very tried and tested technique during, how settler colonialism works. is that just destroy the reason for people to come back to. Here in Canada as well, people have done that. The colonizers have done that to the indigenous, First Nations. As of 2021, approximately 8.3 million Palestinian refugees are there that are registered in the UN. Again, these are really massive numbers. If you look at it, approximately 4.24 million acres of Palestinian land has been stolen, appropriated, all sorts of things. Here, there is one note I want to point out that author has been using Palestinian territories, but the UN has explicitly stated that they would like to call it as occupied Palestinian territory, a singular word versus territories. And they have their own reasons, but in legal and legal reports and observations, they use that term OPT versus territories. Just wanted to point that out. Moving forward, the author goes to explain how the occupation works. So, works in the West Bank. So basically, Israel controls every aspect of the Palestinian lives. They control the water, electricity, airwaves. Palestinians can't build new structures without getting permissions. They need to apply for permits, and almost always they don't get the permits. And when they do get the permits are usually, you can't build the structure in this way and that way. No permanent structures are allowed, and the Israeli military can come anytime and destroy those structures. So that's how the occupation works. They even control who can enter and who can exit these Palestinian towns. They maintain the family registries of Palestinian people, who can marry whom. Um, it's quite bizarre. Like, they have full control over the Palestinian lives. The author has also mentioned the how the law has how the law applies differently to Palestinians versus the Israeli population. So for Palestinians, it's a military law versus civil law for Israeli settlers. Palestinian children Israeli military is the only one in the whole world where it tries Palestinian children under the military law, which is unheard of in any other context, any other place. Um, the 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 occupation has created a reality on the ground in a way that it has undermined any viable future Palestinian state. It has created these small pockets of Palestinian lands, villages that are strategically surrounded by Israeli settlements. So that has kind of um, made it almost impossible to have a Palestinian state, because um, the reality on the ground is that it's been occupied by settlements. The author moves on. He writes about apartheid in the next section. Um, he starts this by saying that in academia, in wherever he has been, people are very uncomfortable using the A word, as they call, uh, in the context of Israel. It's very accepted and written about when it comes to South Africa, but for Israel, it is still like a taboo. word, but he has given extensive, like, summary of the reports by these four human rights organizations. Yes, first two are Israeli human rights organizations, Yesh Din and B'Tselem. Um, it's quite ironic that B'Tselem is considered as extreme left-wing organization in contemporary Israel, but Amnesty International and United Nations as well have like concluded that what Israel has is an apartheid government. This quote quite resonates with me, and author throughout the whole chapter, author has um, you know like he's indicting the world church organizations, like churches, that you are falling short of condemning what is already been condemned when it came to South Africa. So why the double standards is basically the argument. So he says that we are troubled when our sisters and brothers are more concerned about their relations, um, and that's how the code goes. I can't see this code basically. There are this window, but it's here for you to say. See, um, author has also made a point that apartheid doesn't need to be exactly similar to South Africa to be called as apartheid. Um, the political, social, societal, and cultural and economic goals change the physical characteristics of apartheid. So the same way as not we don't have to apply the same standards for for one tragedy to be labeled as genocide. The same thing is for apartheid here. Moving on, the um, um, author says, what Zionism has become today in this day and age. He talks about the nation state law that a few years ago, not even yeah, a couple of years ago, was passed in the Israeli parliament, Knesset, where Hebrew has been made as the officially recognized language. Arabic is just a spoken language. It is no more recognized as equal as Hebrew. A non-Jewish, but this is an exact quote, by the way. Non-Jewish citizens are at the mercy of Jewish state, and they don't have any, sovereign and equal rights enshrined whatsoever. Basically, the Israeli state is only for Jewish people. That's what the nation state law um, means. And that's what Zionism means today. One example is, birthright citizenship and birthright trips versus the right to return. So if let's say you're born anywhere in the world, but you happen to be Jewish, you can claim Israeli citizenship via the birthright um, law, I want to say. But Palestinians, who were expelled and have now become refugees, they are denied the right to return. That's the definition of Zionism today. The author has gone and said that the very existence of Palestinians itself is perceived as a threat and considered resistance. Um, it's like the identity itself needs to be dismantled, and that's the goal of Zionism today. Um, the the, uh, the concluding section is facts matter. The author has thanked organizations, Jewish organizations. One particular is Jewish Voice for Peace, where um, you know they have stood side by side of Palestinians in their struggle throughout these years. He has given one particular event, last year's ICJ ruling, that it ruled that Israel's occupation of Palestine is illegal. Israel must dismantle the illegal settlements from East Jerusalem, West Bank, and stop the blockade of, end the blockade of Gaza. And it has also it has also ordered Israel to, um, give reparations to Palestinians. That's kind of, that's the end of the chapter. Basically, it just proves that what author is trying to say is that when people say, what about October 7? We need to go back and look what happened before that led to October 7. I guess, yeah, that concludes the chapter.
Thank you, Abhay. I'm just reminding you of the time because you said you had a meeting.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's not, it's for you because you had to go to your meeting. I don't want you to be late. So
thank you so much,
thank you so
everyone.
much. That was a very good summary of a difficult chapter to summarize because there's so much material in it and it's divided into all these sections. But I think you did a great job. Thank you.